Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan, and my goal is to work in outdoor recreation and education in universities. So I decided to choose a research question for the critical task proposal that pertains to what I do, especially with FGCU's mission to practice and promote environmental sustainability. The research question that I have is: does outdoor recreation during college increase sustainable practices and conservation efforts among college students? While there is a lot of research on the effects of outdoor trips on gains in student self confidence and community with others, leadership development, and more, research is really lacking in the effect of outdoor trips on changing behaviors for the benefit. Many mission statements of outdoor programs aim to foster, quote, foster a greater sense of environmental appreciation, awareness, and issues among trip participants. However, there is virtually no research on how the success of these missions is being measured. Since environmental issues are not always at the forefront of everyone's decision making, I want to know if there is a correlation between people who recreate outdoors, particularly in a university program, and people who make environmentally friendly decisions in their day-to-day life. So, a couple definitions as we move forward. College outdoor programs are in most universities in the US. They're a standard part of campus recreation, or at least that's been rising. And programming can look very different from school to school. I'm going to quote Priest here for outdoor education. He said, "Outdoor education is an experiential method of learning with the use of all senses. It takes place primarily, but not exclusively, through exposure to the natural environment. In outdoor education, the emphasis for the subject of learning is placed on relationships concerning people and natural resources." Lastly, a trip leader is defined as being accepted into a training program through the competitive application process. A student prepares to lead in a backcountry context unless otherwise noted. It is a student trip leader's job to facilitate this experience for other college students through trips with a variety of activities like backpacking, whitewater, hiking, canoeing, etc. for 1 to 10 days. 10 days would be something like a spring break trip, and sometimes with the assistance of a professional staff. As previously stated, there's little research on the effects of outdoor trips on changing behaviors for the benefit of the environment. In 1996, Ewert argued that through experiences in a natural environment, students develop an appreciation for the complexity of environmental issues and management of natural settings. Literature suggests that experiences in the outdoors are necessary in order to develop and that an emotional connection to nature is a predictor of environmentally responsible behaviors. Horowitz's study in 2014 showed the influences that gave rise to 29 people's environmental activism. Some of the themes that emerged included a combination of intellectual and direct experiences with nature, which contributed to many of the activists' development and commitment to environmental ethics. Research suggests outdoor recreation introduces young people to the environment in a way which develops understanding and appreciation and respect and fosters sensitivity to the environment, helps young people see themselves in a global context, and helps to develop citizens with an awareness of the need for sustainable use of the world's natural resources. My hypothesis is that students are likely to make environmentally sound decisions in their daily lives as a result of participation in collegiate outdoor recreation trips. As part of the data collection plan, this study would rely on surveys to participants before and after outdoor experiences. A follow-up survey would be conducted with participants after 4 months of the outdoor trip. Additionally, trip leaders would be responsible for recording notes of instances that participants discuss environmental issues, practices, and more. The sample includes up to 50 students who participated in a trip during one semester. The following semester would be utilized to send out the follow-up surveys and analyze the data. Information for this study would be collected via questionnaires before the trip at the pre-trip meeting, which is usually a few days before the trip, post-trip, which would be upon the arrival back to campus or perhaps in a van ride, 4 months post-trip via email. Also, daily observations would be recorded by trip leaders in the field. Consistent surveys would be issued among participants, although the trip experiences, like the activity, the trip leaders, group members, and length of the trip, would vary. Surveys involve written responses by participants and trip leaders, as well as a rating scale. Here is a rough draft of a survey that would be given to participants before the trip. It offers basic demographic information about the participants, answers to indicate time that participants spent outside intentionally, questions based on a rating scale to indicate level of care for of consideration for the environment when making day-to-day decisions. And lastly, the questions to elaborate and help define participants' answers from this first sheet. The survey is concise in order to have participants complete with as much care as possible. Particularly on a late drive home from a trip, participants may be tired when completing the post-trip survey. This slide shows questions that the trip leaders would be filling out throughout the trip. Trip leaders are able to give content based on the questions that are asked and add additional observations. Questions include describe the day's itinerary of activities, record remarks you may have heard from participants about the beauty of nature, participants' daily life environmentally friendly practices, and environmentally friendly takeaways from the trip that they'll take back to their daily life. This paper would be filled out by trip leaders every day of the trip, and also they would have a standard set of questions that they would be asked to facilitate to the group to see what kind of responses that they're hearing from the participants. In the proposed method of observation, the trip leader's daily form indicates the conversation being talked about, who's having it, what they're talking about, and more. Trip leaders facilitate conversation through a standard set of questions. Pre-trip, post-trip, and 4-month later surveys culminate to offer possible trends of the effects of outdoor trips on the environmentally friendly decision-making. In analyzing data, I would review the interviews, surveys, and trip leader notes. Once all the data is collected, the research would be illustrated on a graph to compare all answers of each question. I would like to create a graph to illustrate the frequency of outdoor recreation to a person's likelihood of making environmentally conscious decisions. For the ethics section, I would obtain consent from participants and the trip leaders who are involved in the study and keep information confidential, of course. Additionally, trip leaders